This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 281, Olivero Theme. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we're learning about the Olivero theme, the future replacement of Bartik. Is it really? Well, I'm Stephen Cross, and our guest today is Mike Herchel. Mike is a senior front-end developer from Lullabot. He has 13 years of Drupal experience. He specializes in JavaScript and other front-end development technologies. He's the maintainer of the Quick Links module and the Olivero theme. He's also the organizer of the Florida Drupal Camp. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So as we get started today, joining us as usual is John Picozzi from Oomph. John, what's new with you?
Oh, man. So a couple shows ago, maybe it was our last show, we had Adam on from Simply Test Me. And on Friday, Oomph had a summit, company-wide, and in the morning we were given time to kind of tinker on some things. And
John, what is a summit? What does that mean for Oomph?
It's basically a company-wide meeting. Okay. So in the morning, we got some time to tinker on some things, and myself and another coworker were interested in workflows and workspaces in Drupal core.
Yeah.
So we spun up a couple of Simply Test environments and kind of started working on using workflows and testing out workspaces in core. And I will say we got pretty far in our exploration with just environments. We set one up initially just using Drupal right out of the box, and got workflows installed, set up some workflows, tested out the different phases of workflows, and that same environment set up workspaces. And I gotta say, I was a little disappointed at workspaces. As I started using it, I got into a scenario where I literally could not push content from dev to production. So it was kind of fraught with errors. And looking at the two, I'm kind of like trying to find a use case of where I would use this as opposed to workflow. But anyway, the point here, we then spun up another environment with Simply Test Me that had a couple additional modules, and we rebuilt our workflow settings, kind of refined them a little bit, use other modules to, like, for example, Workbench Access to kind of test out some access permissions. And overall, it was a great proof of concept to be able to say, like, okay, we understand how this works. We understand what does and doesn't work. We understand what areas to kind of do a little bit more research on. And then, essentially I was able to say, okay, I'm going to take this from, off of Simply Test Me or not use Simply Test Me and actually build a local environment. So pretty cool.
So it's interesting you bring up workspaces. So it's been one of those modules that's been on my target for a long time. And over the past month, I've been reaching out to the maintainers of workspaces, trying to get them on the show. And I know, Mike, I think you had them on in 2018 on a Lullabot episode. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Yeah, I'm sure of it, because I remember like sitting in an airport waiting for my flight and listening to that episode. It was like 2 years ago. And I'm having trouble getting them on. It seems like it's not a module people want to talk about, and I'm interested now. Now I'm more intrigued to understand why it's been in this experimental mode for years, and people don't want to talk about it. So maybe we can get some people on in the future to talk about it.
It's a cool concept.
It's a great concept. Yeah.
I really love the idea, but the two times, so I tested it most recently on Friday. I tested it before that, I don't know, a year or so ago, maybe more.
Right.
And maybe even after I listened to the Lullabot podcast, I went and tried that. I don't remember, but both times I ended with the same conclusion of like, This isn't stable enough to actually use effectively, because both times I ended up in like this weird error state where I couldn't do anything and I had to throw away the environment. So
And did like the policy change? Because I thought the experimental policy was you were experimental for 2 minor versions, and if you didn't become stable, you were removed.
Ooh, that's a good question right there, because I think
because it is still it's still experimental.
well, great. Now they're never going to come on the show. Now we seem like we're gunning for them. Jeez.
Well, I know that it's something that Acquia was pushing pretty heavily, but then again, with their acquisition of that, I forget the name of the company, Content.
No, it was Spicer that was doing workspaces, I think. You're thinking of the layout builder type thing, right?
No, they have like a content editing, like pushing, I thought, platform that they recently acquired. Maybe it is layout builder that I'm confusing.
Yeah, I might be wrong too.
Anyway.
So that other voice we hear is Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Development. Nick, what's new with you?
Not too much this week. So another woodworking type weekend. So my wife has been busy since I started woodworking, planning a new wall of cabinets for the mudroom. That's kind of ambitious. But I was getting ready to kind of get started on that journey, but I realized my media server, like all the servers for my house, the brains of my house, as it were, is in the same room as my woodworking tools. And I thought I could kind of get away with just like covering it with a sheet or something when I was cutting wood, but I've realized that was a bit too ambitious. It's been getting, everything's been getting dusty. So I've actually spent this weekend building a media closet under my stairs. And so I decided to just kind of use some scrap wood that I had lying around, and I've been, building it up and having a little bit of fun doing something that's not like had to be super precise, because, when you're building shelves, they have to match, right?
We're now calling it your Harry Potter style media closet.
It kind of is. And then, then I'm realizing how inconsistent I was with like lengths of cables. Like some of my cables like barely reach
Right.
and others I have like, 3 meters of extra Ethernet just spooled up. So I've, then, I had to go out and buy a bunch of stuff so I can organize it a little bit better. But, it was kind of, a different type of project, but, it's came together pretty quickly, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks I can wrap that up and move on.
Lots of home improvements here on the show. I mean, John is not talking about it, but he's been sharing pictures of wiring and lighting that he's been doing in his basement.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of stuff going on. Yeah.
We could like make this like a hybrid This Old House,
I think so.
Drupal type thing, because you got the New England accent, so it kind of fits.
All right.
This week on Talking Drupal Old House, we're going to talk about Harry Potter media cabinets.
Exactly.
This Old House is a Drupal site, FYI. Just throwing that out there.
Is it really?
And for me, so the camera, if you're looking at the video today, is a Raspberry Pi webcam that I put together over the weekend. So this is a Jeff Geerling project that I just followed the steps on in the past couple of weeks. So I'll put a link in the show notes. But I see my face looks a little orange today, and everyone else looks washed out. So I don't know if maybe I'm right and everyone else is wrong, but I'm not sure.
I will say in your side-by-side that you shared with us, I did notice that your colors looked very rich and real, and like at your previous camera looked very like bright and washed out, like I do right now.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think you're right and we're wrong.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing too. But as I look at my face, it looks very orange. Not like a past president here, but let's move on. All right, Mike. So what's new with you this week?
Hey, a whole bunch of Florida Drupal Camp organizing, which will be at the tail end of next week for everybody listening. So yeah, fldrupalcamp.org. No, yeah, fldrupal.campsite. I don't even know our own domain name. Anyway, so I've been doing a whole bunch of that, trying to keep it on top of like work, the stuff I get paid to do, and then occasionally doing Olivero type stuff.
Right. So Mike, as a Where Camp organizers here as well. So
yeah,
what have been the challenges for you over the past couple of camps with the Florida Drupal camp?
Personally, it's just maintaining motivation. Like, to tell you the truth, I personally am sick of just virtual camps. Like I want to be in person. I want to drink the beers and have handshakes and see people and look at someone at the tail end of the hall and track them down and talk about whatever in person. And I just really, really miss that. We're doing a whole bunch of cool things this year. We're using like this cool hosted app called gather.town, which basically like the camp's going to be in something similar to Zelda. If like a 16-bit, video game, and you can go around and start conversations. I have, it's not going to be the same, but it's going to be cooler maybe than like the regular old hop-in stuff. We're going to see it, we got a bunch of people coming. We got a bunch of sessions. We announced our sessions and but that's my challenge right there. It's just like maintaining enthusiasm really.
Yeah. So we're all just trying to keep it going and until life gets back. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So we have one story today that I want to bring up. This is from Mike over at Drupal Easy, and it was looking at the stats for Drupal, and it's titled "How Popular Is Drupal Really?" Did you guys get a chance to look at this? And I wonder if you have any thoughts about it.
Yeah, I mean, so he kind of goes through there's a bunch of different companies that kind of track how much or what technologies people use to build their websites, and it provides some reporting for like the top 1 million, 10 million sites, etc. And so it kind of is just on its face, like how much of the top 1 million sites are Drupal sites, and something like between 1% and 3%. I think is the conclusion. I mean, I find it interesting. What's interesting to me is it's something that's always on my mind. What's the shelf life of Drupal? And I guess that's true of any technology platform you're using. When I first started doing development work, one of the things I promised myself is I'd never be that old timer that's just using the old technology because that's what he always did. I didn't want to become like, I took over projects from, people have been doing development in Joomla or whatever for 50 years and or COBOL or Fortran or, whatever. And I just didn't want to turn into that. So one thing that I think is missing from this evaluation is, I mean, it's not completely missing, but one thing that's missing is the community, because I've built sites in non-Drupal CMSs. I built a site in Silverstripe last year, which uses Symfony 2, so it's similar to Drupal as a framework, but the community is nowhere near as large. It's a fairly established CMS, but it's like the Drupal.org, the camps, the meetups, like that's kind of the thing that really still stands out for me with Drupal.
Yeah.
So as a career developer, right, when you look at the technology you work with, and Nick, you just mentioned that you didn't want to be that guy, right, doing Pascal 50 years after Pascal had already disappeared. But when you look at your career, you probably need to think about, like, I want to do the technology that is relevant in my career. And it doesn't matter if it's the most popular or the best, right? It's the one that brings you work. If you can get work consistently over your career, does it matter if it's the most popular or the best technology?
No, but I also don't want to be, for example, supporting a Drupal 6 site 10 years from now because I'm the only guy that knows how to support Drupal. Like, it's a fine line.
Yeah, but if you're the guy, But hang on, if you're the guy that can support a Drupal 6 site 10 years from now, that's probably very lucrative, isn't it?
Until they decide to finally re-platform.
Okay,
and
right.
now I'm out of a job because there's no more Drupal 6 sites. That's really what I protect against. But
I got to agree with Nick. I don't think anybody wants to be somebody maintaining a Drupal 6 site 10 years from now. Now, being the guy that has maintained Drupal 6 sites 10 years ago and is now on Drupal, 12 or 13 or whatever they're going to be on in 10 years, maybe that's a good position to be in. I think overall I was saddened by the built with stats of about 618 sites are using Drupal, which equates to 0.97% of all websites, which is actually fourth among content management systems, being beaten out by WordPress, WooCommerce Checkout, and brace yourselves, Joomla.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising. I wonder at that methodology, to be honest. But
Mike, what do you think? What do you think here?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would argue that WooCommerce and WordPress are basically the same thing. Joomla has traditionally always been just a little bit more of a market share than Drupal. But that being said, Drupal pivoted many years ago, toward ambitious digital experiences. That's what Dries likes to say. And if you're making a moderately complex website, Drupal's great, especially if you need to shoot your content into different areas. But the things that WordPress just beats us on is WordPress is people are familiar with that interface, and usually it's better. It might not always be better. Some people can make the Drupal experience better, but I think editorial experience is really where other CMSs are eating Drupal. And
I also wonder along those lines, how obviously built with only has a certain amount of data collection or both of these services, right? Only have a certain amount of data collection capabilities, right? So over the last couple of years, we've launched 2 intranets with Drupal that not accessible to the outside world. So these services have no idea that they exist, right? Also, I wonder if they're factoring in headless implementations, right? Where Drupal's supporting the content architecture, but not the overall front end of the website. Yeah. So, I think those things are, interesting factors in how kind of Drupal's moving maybe away from you need a website, spin it up sort of platform to the, hey, let's structure content well and provide API endpoints and integrate, as you said, Mike, with a bunch of third-party systems and stuff like that.
There's also kind of one other thing that really jumped out to me in this story, and in the article he mentions Drupal kind of pivoted more towards the enterprise. And I saw somebody in the comments, I don't know if I want to call the person out, but they kind of quickly jumped in and said, hey, I see this a lot. Drupal isn't just for enterprise. Drupal is also much better for, very, very simple sites. And I see that quite often. I mean, people say, hey, Drupal's for enterprise. Somebody jumps in and says, hey, no, they're also great out of the box for very simple sites. But, something that maybe the Drupal community is in a bit of denial about this, but something that I've noticed is Drupal doesn't have that, it used to be you could start Drupal. Somebody started a company and they just needed 2 pages. You could do Drupal 7. Then they need a little more complexity. You could add a couple modules. Then their business grew. They need a lot more complexity. You could write some custom code. Drupal 8, I feel like it doesn't have that growth curve anymore. Yes, you can do a simple 3 or 4 page site that just displays information. You can do a really complex digital experience like you said, but it's hard to do that middle of the road for somebody just starting up, middle of the road experience that Drupal 7 used to just excel at.
Nick, I think functionally Drupal is there. I think design wise could be where some of the issues are with that, which is kind of related to our show today.
Yeah.
Is that
nice
front-end
segue.
theme. Yeah, it really is.
Get this guy.
It really is. I mean, we don't, Drupal websites don't want to all look like Bartik, right? But what is the next step up from Bartik that you don't need to get a designer involved with? That's kind of like a question here. It's always been like, what are the strengths of WordPress? And I use WordPress for my personal, go to stephencross.com. It's a WordPress blog. And it's there because
great content, terrible platform. What?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, it's not. It's a great
No,
platform.
it's not.
It's a great platform.
Serves the use case, right, Stephen?
Yeah, I can easily put content there.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked a theme that worked for me and I installed it and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I made minimal changes. That, by the way, stephencross.com has been through like 15 different blog platforms over the past 6 years. So it's more of like an experiment for me, but today it's on WordPress. So let's transition to our show topic today with Mike so Mike, give us, what is the elevator pitch for Olivero?
Yeah, so Olivero is a new theme for Drupal. We were aiming to become the default theme for Drupal. So as a lot of, as you and a lot of your listeners know, like Bartik has been around since Drupal 7. Drupal 7 was released very early, 2011. So that's like a lot. That's like over 10 years.
That seems crazy, right?
That's a lot of internet year. That's like 1,000 internet years, Right. And when it was released, it wasn't responsive or anything like that. And it has since been like retrofitted to be responsive, but it looks old. It looks dated. It looks like it was designed in 2010 because that's when it was. It doesn't have features like drop-down menus or anything like that, and it's just, yeah. So and when you have people coming into Drupal, for the first time, like let's say I'm like a new bootcamp graduate or something, and I pick up Drupal and I look at that, I'm like, man, that looks like crap. That looks like 2010. Is this, what am I getting into? And so that's like the main goal is to basically solve that right there. We want something that feels modern, something that looks good, something that says, man, this looks pretty awesome right here. And, this is Drupal and it's powerful and it's beautiful and it's accessible,
So, I mean, I agree with all those points. I mean, it's definitely, the thing, it's interesting to me how Drupal kind of goes through those cycles with different things where like, hey, once we decide to replace something, we generally innovate as a community. And it's something that really stands out. And then we kind of stick with that for 10 years until we decide it's time to innovate again.
Yeah. Cough, RDF, cough.
So the project name originated from somewhere pretty special. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a wonderful community member whose name is Rachel Alvaro, and Rachel was an accessibility advocate. She was a Drupal developer. She was a valued member of the community, and she worked for the National Federation of the Blind, and she was friends with a lot of people. And unfortunately, she passed away maybe a little bit less than a year from when we thought about this. And so we were thinking about names, and a former coworker of mine, Taryn Almendez, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing her last name properly, suggested Rachel Olivero. And, that just hit everything because she's a wonderful person. It's a great way to honor her. It's a great way to honor her legacy. It's a great way to say, we're going to make this accessible, like super accessible, because, she was blind. And so that's the origin of the name.
So you mentioned that you've been kind of working on this for a little while. How did this kind of initiative come about? What was the impetus?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it really speaks to the power of in-person meetings. This was maybe the last day of DrupalCon Seattle, And I was with one of my coworkers, Putra Banacorsi, who's now a co-initiative lead. And we were in, I think, as I remember it, we were in the lobby, and I think we were talking to Angie Byron and Lowry Escala. Lowry is a front-end core committer. I don't know, might have had a few drinks, I don't know, but I was like, what's up with the theme? Is anyone doing it? And he's like, I don't know who said it, but they're like, no, but you should. And I was like, yeah, we'll see. And so I was talking to Putra later, and, the next morning, I think we were at the airport, and we said, yeah, we can totally do this. We have access to people who know how to get stuff done. We have access to designers, through Lullabot. We have, we can just get this done. So we kind of sat on it for about a month, and then Putra brought it up again. And we're like, all right. So I pinged Lowry in Slack and said, hey, is anyone working on this? And he's like, no. And I was like, all right, well, we're going to potentially do this, reached out to some designers, because design is always the hardest part,
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, ended up getting we ended up getting Jen Witkowski, who is she's also an initiative lead and co-maintainer, and she brought in Jared Panchat, who's Lullabot's creative director. And at that point, came up with some designs. We ended up kind of figuring out some process and pitched them to various stakeholders that we identified, including people like Angie Dries and UX team, and things like that. From there, I ended up making the static HTML proof of concept and iterated on that. At Florida Drupal Camp last year, which was probably like one of the last in-person camps, we ended up doing a sprint, flying Putra actually down from New Jersey. And we ended up starting to get it into Drupal, and we've just been going ever since. We got it into Drupal 9.1. It's currently experimental. And our aim is to make it stable and the default by 9.2. And 9.2 will be released in June 2021. So our deadline's probably like April, May, to get it to that point.
How does the development cycle of a theme in Drupal differ, that you're releasing to the public, differ from kind of a module development cycle?
Oh, so much different.
I imagine there's a lot of changes.
Like when we initially did it, it was in Contrib, and we were able just to move so fast, because I would just commit stuff directly to the repo without creating an issue. Like I say, I'm going to get this fixed, and I'm just going to commit it direct in, and, screw it, and we were able to move really, really fast there. With core, there's a big old process to it, so you have to have the patch, you have to have someone technical review the patch, then you usually, at least for us, we have to get like some accessibility review on the patch. And at that point, it goes to a core committer. So you have all this process, but that's as quick as it can possibly go. What really happens is it goes back and forth. It bounces around like a little pinball between a lot of those people. And sometimes those goalposts move too. There's been several like accessibility issues where we're like, they identify an issue, we fix it, and then they identify another issue. And so it pinballs around. So it's a lot slower. Like right now, I would say like I have like maybe like 4 or 5 fairly large patches kind of waiting on various reviews, and some of those patches conflict with each other. So the first one will get committed, and at that point, I need to kind of re-roll and those other patches to take into account that. So it's a lot of hurry up and wait. I just tried to be like, as soon as I get like a response on any of those things, I re-roll all my patches immediately. I've also been like very, very proactive in reaching out to Lowry Escala and Ben, I forget Ben's last name. He's the new provisional accessibility maintainer, in doing basically kind of mini sprints where we'll just get on a Zoom call like this, and we'll just like hang out for 3-4 hours and just get stuff done. And that has been really effective. I've also been doing some similar things with Andrew Mcpherson, who's one of the Drupal core accessibility maintainers, and he's been super helpful. And holy crap, he's also been like really, really thorough. Like, oh my gosh. And but just getting on a call and like you can figure out solutions to things that would take like maybe a week in an hour, and that's been very, very helpful.
So it sounds like to me that you feel like you're moving maybe faster than the process allows. Is that fair to say?
I want to be. Yeah. I totally want to be. There's tons of stuff I want to do. But right now I'm just keeping my eye on the prize, and the prize for me is just to get stable and make it the default. There's tons of other stuff I want to do. But right now I'm just concentrating 100% on, these must-have issues.
So let's talk a little bit about functionality, right? So, we all kind of know what a theme does, but what are the functional goals for the Olivero theme?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because as you know, Drupal can pretty much do anything,
Everything.
So yeah. So
is this going to have one of those built-in slideshows that was super popular in Drupal 7? Every contributed theme had one of those.
We have some integrated Flash functionality, so you can upload your SWF directly, and we have some DHTML menus. So Drupal does everything, but we can't really look like everything. So this theme's goals are, number one, to look good out of the box and to look good for a blog. I want developers to blog with this. For that, we're even styling things like code blocks. You want
StephenCross.com to come back to Drupal is what you're saying.
Yeah. And I can work with you for that too, So, that's, we want to look good out of the box. We want it to be accessible, as accessible as anything out there. We want it to look awesome, and then we want it to be usable. Now, if you're building, I had a friend ask me hey, I want to build an application, that does this and shows this. I'm like, this isn't the right theme. Use something like Claro if you're doing a whole bunch of tables and things like that. But yeah. So
do you see this being a base theme? Because one thing Bartik never was a base theme. I think I tried that once and regretted that decision pretty quickly. Zen was kind of the way to go in Drupal 7. In Drupal 8, I used 7 or something like that. Do you envision Olivero being a base theme for people starting new projects?
No, because people for example, as I said, Olivero is probably not quite fit for your project. If I'm building a custom theme, I don't want to do that. We're also not supporting Olivero as a base theme, at least right away. And the reason behind that is because right now we're changing a lot of things. And if you have a base theme and you override some selectors and then we change those class names, that's going to break things. So that's definitely not supported. The thing that people want, though, is they want to be able to change the colors. They want to change that color from that blue to something else. And people are using Olivero as a base theme to do that, even though we're not supporting it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And we want to integrate that functionality in there. Right now, the only way that we can do this is the color module. But I also want to say Olivero is burdened with the technical debt of supporting Internet Explorer 11. So there's a lot of things with Internet Explorer 11 that we have to do that we otherwise wouldn't do. And that kind of just that makes things a little more, creaky,
Why,
Mike,
why did you make that decision?
Why do you feel you need to support that?
Drupal core has a commitment to support Internet Explorer 11. So this is a Drupal core decision.
Until
now,
when?
Well, probably until Drupal 10. There's an issue right now, and we can throw these into the show notes, to remove Internet Explorer 11 support from Drupal 10. But as it stands right now, we have to support IE11. And there's a lot of specific technologies that are really difficult to work without. The primary one being proper use of CSS custom properties, aka CSS variables. Now, we kind of work around this right now. Like we have post CSS in Drupal core. So we take those, we write things like CSS variables, but then we compile them down to regular old properties in the CSS. So IE11 can understand them. But a problem with that approach is that those variables are not calculated at runtime, which means that if I'm working on a modern project, I can have like one value of the CSS variable at a certain breakpoint and another value at a different breakpoint and another value at a different breakpoint. Now, when these get compiled down before shipping to the browser, I have to define 3 different variables. So I have to say header width small, header width large, header width medium, stuff like that. And then, there's a lot of little technical things like that. And we're trying to architect it in a way that once we move to Drupal 10, and assuming that Drupal 10 does remove IE11 support, which it probably will, we'll be able to rip this stuff out pretty easily. But yeah, we'll see.
IE11 was released in October 17th of 2013.
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft isn't even supporting it after the end of this year, right? So why are we?
So I mean that there are a lot of organizations that are still using IE11, which is unfortunate. But
no, I think the market share is really low on IE11.
It is.
It's going down faster.
It's hovering around like 2% like right now.
Yeah.
And it's gonna go down. And
And my guess is that a lot of that is government agencies.
Yep.
I would guess so. Yeah.
IE11 is what I would guess. Yep.
Yeah.
And I believe some educational institutions too.
Maybe. Yeah. True. Yep.
Yeah. God help them all. You can imagine their computers like infested with spyware and remember those toolbars that would come down? You would have those toolbars and Real Player and oh my God.
Wait a second. I shouldn't have 16 toolbars enabled right now. What do you mean?
So you mentioned a little bit ago, Claro, and I think we've mentioned a couple times on the show. We had Christina on the show a few months ago to talk about Claro. I'm curious if you've collaborated with her and the team around Claro and any design decisions or structure decisions.
I've copied a whole bunch of code, like a lot of times if we're doing like something particular, we need a template or something like that, we'll go steal it from Claro, modify it for our own needs. That's pretty much the default workflow. I've also been looking at their styling of like form elements and especially focus states, which if an elephant gets focused, you gotta know where it is. And Claro has this like nice double outline thing, and so we're trying to do that because obviously we need to be very, very accessible also. But that's kind of where it's at, right there. There's not a whole bunch of back and forth.
Do you think, Mike, there should be some synergy between the front end and back end themes in terms of technologies and strategies?
I mean, yeah, but like a lot of the stuff that we added, all right, so like Claro added Post CSS, so we used Post CSS. We added a plugin for Post CSS called Post CSS Preset ENV, which is kind of like almost a parent plugin for a lot of cool things. And they're not using that yet because I talked to Christina maybe just last week. She didn't even realize that was added, but at the same time, you don't want to like refactor your whole code base because at that point things are gonna break. I mean, in theory, synergy sounds fine, yeah, but at the same time, like we just want to get it to work. It's like 2 different themes. It's 2 different things, and they're very componentized with each other. Like I don't want to depend on Claro. I'm sure they're not going to want to depend on Olivero. So we want to follow Drupal best practices because people will look at our code for examples, but at the same time, there's always different ways to do things,
Sure.
So you mentioned accessibility as well a few times, and do you have a WCAG compliance target in mind?
Yeah. So once again, this goes back to Drupal core. So Drupal core is required to be like WCAG 2.0 AA compliant, I believe is it, and that's a Drupal core what do you call it? It's not a recommendation, it's a requirement. Like there's an accessibility requirement for, and accessibility is also the reason that Claro is not currently stable, because they're working through some of those issues. We have Drupal core has a number of accessibility maintainers who are just like very, very passionate and volunteers, and they're awesome. And in certain respects, we're going beyond that too. Like we're doing things that we're just not meeting those requirements. We're doing things a little bit better than in certain ways too.
What's kind of the biggest surprise for people that haven't looked deeply into accessibility? What's kind of the biggest surprise, easy win that somebody can do to help their site be more accessible?
Oh, that's a really good question. So those are two questions right there. The biggest surprise for me is basically all the different tools that people use to actually read a website. So for example, there's these scanning software where there'll be this horizontal kind of line coming down like from the top of your screen, and people will hit a button and it will stop it, and then a vertical one will go, and then they will that will get a grid, and then they'll enlarge it, and then they'll be able to move the mouse over and hover over something, and there's things like that people use, and we need to make sure our stuff works properly with that. That's the biggest surprise. The easiest win for me is using buttons for drop downs instead of links. So Drupal core since 8.9 supports creating button elements in the menu. So we're you go into Drupal's core menu system, and you can type in the path and the path to wherever you want the link to. Instead of doing that, you type in route : and then the button tag, the little was it less than button then greater than. And I wrote an article on Low about that, and I'll link to it in the show notes also. But that's something that Drupal does, and at that point you still have to attach your JavaScript events to it, to open and close. You have to make sure that toggles. There's ARIA attributes that state needs to be toggled on, so that'll indicate to the screen reader whether it's open or closed. But there's tons of cool things like that.
So earlier, Mike, you were talking about how people would like to customize a theme, and you said all they want to do is change colors.
Yeah.
But really, what are the customizations you can do in the Claro theme?
I'm assuming you're asking Olivero, yeah. So
sorry, Olivero theme. Sorry.
Get it right, Steven. Come on. So there's a number of theme settings, So we have this theme setting for an always on mobile menu, So Olivero's design, if you were to look at it, at desktop, it has basically a bunch of stuff going across the header of the site, like so many other websites do. But what if you just have a whole bunch of things? What if I have 20 menu items? They're not all going to fit up there. So we have this checkbox under the theme settings, that you navigate through the administration interface. And you can check this box, and basically it toggles the CSS class to the body that basically tells the front end to basically make that mobile menu always on. So even at widescreens, you will have a mobile menu. That's pretty neat. We also have some theme settings to change the background color of the site branding region. This is up, where you put the logo or your site name and stuff. And right now, there's only a couple different options. There's a primary color option, which is blue. There's white, and then there's gray. And so those are some customizations that we have right now. We don't have the ability to change color yet. There's also different regions, theme regions. We have a theme region, I believe it might be called Hero or something like that. So if you do one a little slideshow in there, or insert your little Flash applet or something like that, that's a perfect place for it to go, because it sits right under the menu and it goes full width right there. So we added that after seeing someone actually sub-theme our theme, and they put that in and hey, that looks good, and a lot of people are probably going to want that. So we just yeah, let's just add it. And this is back when it was still in Contrib, so I didn't have to ask permission.
So I have a question. We keep talking about customization. We keep talking about everybody wanting to change colors, right?
Yeah.
With Bartik, right, there's an addition of the color module, right, that's needed to switch colors for Bartik. Is that a requirement for Olivero?
It's definitely not a requirement. We have an issue. It's something that a lot of people want. We want the ability to switch colors, but at the same time, we don't want to integrate with the color module like it, at least right away. Like our primary goal to get stable is basically to fix these accessibility bugs and fix some coding standards issues, and at that point we're going to be looking good. Changing colors, though, like ideally what we would like to do is basically just change the primary color and have CSS variables key off that primary color and then kind of change everything else around. And that's something like if you ever looked at the Gin admin theme, they do it really, really well there. It's really, really neat. But if we ever do support this in core with Drupal 9, it will be the color module. And if anyone wants to get in there and start screwing around with that, like that would be something that people would like love you for. So if someone wants to get in there and want to do a little bit of theming, I will be behind you and I'll give you code reviews and everything like that.
We won't go down the road of if we really need the color module anymore. If we could deprecate that and take it out of core, we'll save that for another show.
Yeah, there's an issue with that, and it might disappear with Drupal 10, but for Drupal 9, it's what we have.
That would make me happy. One last thing to uninstall. Anyway,
hey, I want to ask a question here that's not in the notes, and I apologize.
That's all right.
But Mike, what do you think the mission should be for the default theme of the Drupal project? What should the goal of that theme be? Is it to be accessible? Is it to be customizable? What is that goal of that default theme to be? Because I think that's where this theme is headed, right? Is to replace Bartik. So what should the primary goal be?
So it's a lot of the stuff I talked about a little bit earlier, but so it's impossible to be everything to everyone. So the first goal and the top priority goal should be to look good and feel good out of the box. Second goal should be accessible. And I would even maybe argue that accessibility could be a top one. And then it needs to support a use case. And for us, that use case is just blogging. Adding some blogs and inserting images into the blog and things like that. If people are building applications or they're building something more complex, they're not going to use our default thing, and that's fine.
So
I would love to hear your all thoughts on this too.
I don't know. There are so many. I mean, I agree with your statement that you can't be everything to everyone, but I also wonder, like, could Olivero be like a jumping off point for developing your own custom theme? Do people even want to do that? Or do they just want to, do what they're doing now with, Stark or one of the other more basic themes, Classy or whatever it be, and just run with that? I don't know.
My ideal, I think, would be, the two that you said, looks good out of the box for general use case, is accessible, but I think something that would be really nice, something that would be a huge boon to the Drupal community, I think, is if it was a base theme, but not a general purpose base theme, like you would use like 7.4 or Zen or something like that, but a base theme that is for the express purpose of like generating like a theme ecosystem, if you would say.
So you know what you're looking for. You are looking for issue number 3050384, which is provide. I just pulled this up as you're talking. Provide a starter kit theme in core. This is something that Larry Escala is working on. I will throw this into the bottom of the show notes right here, and
we'll edit out that comment. You just looked it up. It's way more impressive if it seems like the top of your head.
Yeah, but there's actually been a significant amount of work on this by Lowry. Like I see some commits from him from earlier today. Like there's work on this. It's right at the bottom. Yeah, so it's about at the bottom of the show notes. So check that out and provide comments in there and you know, bike shed it a bit. He needs more bike sheds on it, you know.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I mean, the thing is, that's like we mentioned kind of at the top of the show when we were talking about, you know, market share. One of the big holes in the Drupal world is like, you know, if you were building a site for a plumber, WordPress has 5,000 plumber themes, right?
Yep.
And Drupal doesn't have anything of that, anything there. But
yeah, I have thoughts on all this stuff too. I know we don't have time for it, but I have thoughts.
Oh, we've got time. We've got plenty of time. So overall, we've been talking obviously about how things got started, where, you know, kind of where the project is, what the project does. But I'm really curious if you can kind of summarize it into just an overall project status. Like what's the overall status of the project as it stands right now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I would say like we're maybe like about 70% likely to be stable. You know, like right now, and I'm not calling these people out because they're all volunteers, but right now it comes down to like some accessibility reviews that we need from the maintainers, and this might change tomorrow, you know. But basically, like we have these major accessibility issues that are blockers, and I think I have them resolved properly, but like I need the reviews on those, and then we need some code reviews. And at that point, they need to be committed. And you know, as I said, sometimes you know we'll get far down one way, and then some new issues are identified. You know, so we either open up a further one or like a follow up issue, or we'll fix it right there. And that's just something that's been a process of it. So I think we're on track. You know, I'm on top of stuff right now. I have a lot of motivation to get this done. But you know, it's not just me, you know, at this point either.
so how does that process go? How do you decide what gets in? Like I look at Olivero, decide, hey, I really like this feature, open an issue. You know, how are you evaluating that? Is it just based on, hey, does this get us closer to, you know, stable?
As it stands right now, yeah. Like I'm not adding new features. Like basically, if it's not a stable blocker, I'm not doing a heck of a lot of work on it, you know, or if any, because our goal is just to get this stable. So like basically, in order to be a stable blocker, it needs to be like either a significant bug, needs to be an accessibility issue that the maintainers designate as a blocker, or it needs to be some, you know, technical debt or like, you know, what do you call it? Some code that needs to comply better with the Drupal coding standards.
Hey, Mike, what has been the biggest challenge over the development of this project? It sounds like it's been going on for about 18 months or so. What's been the biggest challenge for you?
Good question. Like personally, like I like my motivation has ebbed and flowed personally. You know, there's been a couple months where I just haven't had much motivation. I have to force myself back into it. Right now, I'm fairly motivated, you know, and I think that's just normal. Technical challenges. Internet Explorer 11 has provided a whole bunch of challenges. Like we use things like CSS Grid, you know, which Internet Explorer 11 has a very, very basic implementation of, and we do a lot of things where we want to, like, let's say float an image, you know, like you can do a media embed image and float it out, but we want to actually go outside the grid. And so we accomplish that with negative margins. But in order to know how far we need to pull it out, we actually need to calculate the grid width. And that's really complicated. We have a lot of math that's abstracted out in some of it. And we're trying to like abstract it out so it's easier to do, but it works. A lot of it, once again, would be very simpler if we didn't support Internet Explorer 11. So those are all been challenging things, along with some of these accessibility stuff, things that I'm just learning about. Yeah.
So what is your kind of role in this? Maybe we should ask this earlier. What's your role in this project, and who are the other key contributors? You mentioned a couple of you guys kind of came together in DrupalCon Seattle.
Yeah, so it's Pucha.
How is that team?
Yeah, Pucha and I that have been like kind of leading it. For the most part, it's been me. She's been, a little bit working on some other type of stuff, at least recently. So like the main the maintainers of it are Pucha and I, and then Jen Witowski. We all work for Lullabot. Jen is a designer, Pucha is another front-end developer and PM, and then there's me. I've been probably doing the lion's share of the work, just like kind of pushing things over, and Pucha's been handling a lot of reviews and things like that. On top of that, we also have this wonderful person from Siberia, believe it or not, named Konstantin. I never even talked to him, so I don't know how to pronounce his name properly. And he was very active, and he's a maintainer. He's been busy, at least in the past few months, so he hasn't been terribly active recently. Hopefully we'll get him back in. Jared Panchat has also been amazing. He's one of the designers who came up with like the initial design for the theme. Kat Shaw has been also amazing. She's a coworker of mine who's been doing a lot of accessibility related testing. Like she coordinated testing with the National Federation of Blind and things like that. Okay. On top of that, we just have like a whole bunch of active people, and and at the top of those lists is basically the accessibility maintainers. Angie Mcpherson has probably been very active. Rain Brow, I don't even know. She has a new last name, but Rain, she works for Google and lives in Colorado. She's been super helpful. And then Mike Gifford helped organize create the contacts for the testing, and then Ben Mullins, that's his last name. He's recently come in. He's a provisional accessibility maintainer, and he's been super helpful and enthusiastic. And then on top of that, Lowry Escala is just, of course, like super helpful. Gabor was very helpful about just getting it started, like, and keeping up to date and keeping enthusiasm and stuff too. So yeah.
So it sounds like Lullabot's definitely, you and Lullabot is definitely leading the charge here. Like, what percentage of the project are fellow bots working on? Sounds like a pretty high percentage. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I would say a significant percent. Yeah, I don't know what that percent is, but like, I mean, as far as the design all came from us, so that's not stuff that you can look at code for, most of the commits and stuff are either me or Putra, and then Konstantin too. Like he's done a lot early. He tackled some of the more difficult things.
Hey, Mike, have you found people using your theme in production already? Sure
have. I forget this website. It's Canadian. Was it Paste.ca? Hold on 1 second. Paste. There's like a Paste Center in Canada. Yeah. Man, I'm looking. I'm googling it right now.
Do you think that the code is ready to do that? Would you encourage or discourage anyone from doing that?
I mean, I would honestly, I would straight up discourage you because it's going to change. But if you do fork it, like honestly, the code's good,
Right.
Yeah. So the website that this based off of right here, and this is the website that gave us the the idea for the top hero region is paste-il.ca, and it's like, I guess, some nonprofit in Canada and things, and they sub-themed it and changed the colors. And, we don't support any of that, but it works fine, and it is
what it is. Show notes?
I sure will right now. Yeah. So I'll throw it right at the bottom right there. So you can look at that and you can see it, like, it looks really good,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, you would not recommend production use?
Yeah, if you do fork it, Well, like no. I would use it in production, like if it's in core, and if you don't want to change the colors and everything like that. Yeah, it's great.
Just go through your usual testing process. If it works, it works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
For myself, it's time for me to rewrite my, like I've got a couple of really small sites that I maintain that don't do anything, and it's time to update them. I would probably use this theme. Like if something small break, like these are people that, I built the site 10 years ago and I just host it for them because that's what I've done for them for the last 10 years. They're not going to complain if something shifts over or color slightly changes. So
you
might be fine for that.
You have a couple of small sites that don't really do anything, but you're looking to upgrade them.
Well, yeah, because they're Drupal 7, which is end of life. So I need to have that
maybe it's time.
with them.
Maybe is it? So they're being used by clients, is what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the clients, but they're like I said, they're like painters, or they're people that just have a static site and will probably.
I got you now. Sorry, I thought you were just moving along websites that didn't really do it.
No,
anyway,
of course not.
Mike, last but not least, if somebody's listening and really super motivated and wants to get involved, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Slack channel that we're on, so you got to be on Drupal Slack, which you can just Google Drupal Slack, and then the channel that we're on is D9-theme. D9-theme, and we talk about lots of different things that you can ask. We have every 2 weeks we have Slack only meetings where we'll just throw out the progress and see if anyone has any questions, and usually it's just people listening. There's usually not that many questions because I keep on top of it in general. But I would say go there and say like, hey, I want to help, and these are my areas of expertise. I had one particular person say, hey, I'm more of a front of the front end type person, and is there anything that I can solve? And I, my first initial thought was like, yeah, like honestly, like a lot of that stuff was already kind of taken care of. So I told him, well, I can't really think of anything right now. But then I came back and realized that, well, hey, our maintenance page isn't styled, for when the site's under maintenance and stuff. And so I threw that over there, and he's given it a little bit of work. So there's things like that.
That's my next question. Like, are there any specific areas you need help with? Like if we have like some folks that are great at architecture or accessibility, are there specific areas you need help with?
Like as it stands right now, we're waiting on like maintainer review. So like I would say like no, like there's a number of issues that are more code quality issues where like we need to do like a bit of backend pre-processing to make our CSS classes more into BEM syntax as opposed to using the Cascade portion of CSS. Mm-hmm. And so some of that would be nice. One thing actually, something that just came to mind right here is we need additional tests. We have a blocker issue where we need additional like testing, like functionality tests and stuff in core for Olivero. And I honestly have never written a test in my life as far as like core tests, like things like Night Watch or whatever else is in core. So I don't even know where to start, but people know that stuff and we need help.
There you go.
Do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to us on Twitter at talkingdrupal.com and the Talking Drupal channel and the Drupal Slack that Mike just mentioned. Or you can email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support's greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button.
Mike, thanks for joining us today to talk about.
Thanks for coming on. I mean, hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, is there anything we've missed that you wanted to mention before we close out?
Register for Florida Drupal Camp. All of you all. I tell you what, I'm gonna create this right now. I'm creating a coupon code for half off called Talking Drupal. I'm not even asking anyone. So like if any other people are on here and they want, if any of the other we got core organizers are on here and disagree with us. Well, too bad, because I'm just doing it, and that's it. So it'll lower the price from $20 to $10. Code is Talking Drupal, and I'll log into Eventbrite and create that in like 5 minutes. So it'll be good, and it'll be the camp is next week, which is like I think like February 18th, 19th, 20th. It's going to be really cool.
What are the highlights for the camp?
Well, we have our sessions have been announced yesterday. We're going to announce the schedule coming up, but we have like sessions are great. We have a bunch of trainings out there. Like the website is fldrupal.camp. And we have tons of trainings, including things like configuration systems, getting started, user experience, decouple Drupal with Gatsby, accessibility, Tailwind CSS, and object-oriented programming. So and these are like world-renowned experts that are giving these, and it's cheap. I don't even know what we're charging for it, but just assume it's like super cheap.
Tailwind CSS is hot right now, so you
should
get in on that.
Yeah.
Do you
buy your
summits?
shares.
You have summits too, right?
We have a DevOps summit that we're doing. Thanks for bringing that out. So we have a DevOps summit where we're just gonna have a bunch of DevOpsy people in there talk about things like Kubernetes and how to pronounce it and things like that.
That's great.
I mean, that's the biggest question, right? Do
K8.
you say that?
How to spell it?
Say, register with the new discount code Talking Drupal.
Yep.
When you go to, I don't know what the URL is. What is it?
fldrupal.camp.
fldrupal.camp. Yep.
Okay, there you go.
This is live podcasting right here, folks.
That's how we do it. Now
All right, Mike, if anyone
out
wants
how to create this.
If anyone wants to reach out to you, to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can email me at mike@herchel.com. My last name is spelled Herchel, or you can Twitter me at Mike Herchel, MikeHerchel, or you can contact me through my Drupal.org contact form, or I live in Gainesville, Florida. If you head out to the local bars and it's not COVID times, you might see me there too.
There you go. All right, thank you. How about you, John?
I don't know that I can. My standard intro does justice to that. I'm not suggesting people meet me at local bars. I'm at John Picozzi on all the major social networks and Drupal.org, and you can find out about Oomph at oomphinc.com.
And Nick,
you can find me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
And I'm Stephen Cross. Just go to stephencross.com.
Jout, it's a WordPress site.
Good show. Thanks for joining us.
Nick, waiting for you here, bud.
What? Oh, sorry. If you, I didn't see that my name was there. If you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.